Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for all of your birthday wishes this weekend. I had a really great weekend with my friends. We had a small little Schitt's Creek themed birthday party and a day by the pool. So I really enjoyed it. And for all of you that keep asking for my address to send me something, I really appreciate that you want to send me a gift, but for safety reasons, I do not give out my address to people that are not my close friends, just because I've had issues with that in the past. I do have a Patreon account if you guys are interested in supporting me in that way. The link is in my bio. I really do appreciate all the love that you all share with me on a daily basis. So check me out on Patreon. I do a lot of stuff there as well. But I just want to say thank you so much for all the love that you all shared with me on my birthday. Hopefully you all had a great Labor Day weekend. And for those of you that aren't outside or are outside of the United States, hope you had a good weekend as well. Super excited about doing these lives this week. So I will go and then we will go ahead and get started. It's been a crazy week for me already. So let's see.
Ooh.
Oh.
Wow. Whoa. It's so different being on this side of the interview.
I see you got your fun filters going through.
I decided not to, just in case it takes up bandwidth.
Yeah, you never know. With the Instagram lives, you gotta go with the flow.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on today. This is exciting.
Yeah, how was your weekend?
Oh my gosh, it was amazing. I felt like everybody went away and I felt like I stayed put, but had a staycation with one of my really close girlfriends. And we just did work. We had fun and we just did so many things. So, how was yours?
I celebrated my birthday, and so I had
That's
a lot of fun.
right.
It's very interesting because, yeah, Labor Day weekend, I feel like a lot of people leave town. So I live in a city where it seemed like all the locals left, but then tons of people came from other places. So my friends that came from out of town to celebrate my birthday were having trouble finding hotels. So it's
Oh
very interesting.
no. Well, happy belated. It was
Thank
definitely
you.
a ghost town, I think, in Los Angeles as well. So I was like, where's everybody?
Love it. You would think LA would be a place that people would go on Labor Day, but I guess big city during a pandemic, not a good idea.
Maybe, yeah.
Escape to the country and find all the mountains and stuff. Awesome. Well,
Exactly.
I will let you introduce yourself so people know who you are, and then we can jump into a conversation.
Sure. Well, hi everyone. My name is Nikki Sun. I am a host and filmmaker. So what that essentially just means is I work on both sides of the camera. I work as an on-camera host. I love technology. I have a tech channel that I just launched like maybe a year and a half ago called Tech Nikki Speaking. And my name is Nikki. So it's a play off of the phrase technically speaking, if you get it.
Love it.
But on there, I cater it towards beginning content creators, filmmakers, especially those that are still in marginalized communities, especially women in tech or filmmakers of color. I definitely try to amplify and highlight and interview those kinds of filmmakers on my channel, as well as give you the 411 on the latest cameras or what gear you should get or how to up your video productions or phone and mobile productions as well. And Nikki Sun Media is my media company, and I'm a freelance director, producer, editor, um, and host. So I just have been able to work with so many different groups of people. But that's me in a nutshell. And recently I have become the host for NAB Show Live. So for those who do not know NAB, it is the National Association of Broadcasters. And every year before the pandemic, they put on the largest technology broadcast and media show. And it's all these companies that want to share their latest software, hardware, gear, and basically 100,000 people come out and play with the toys and figure out what's new. So it's going to be a little different this year, but I'm very excited to be not only doing IG lives with 10 amazing guests within the media, broadcast, and entertainment sector. I will also be at the show in Las Vegas from October 9th to the 13th to give everybody live coverage, especially for those who cannot make the show. So I'll be taking you through the show through my lens, and feel free to follow along on NAB Show or my channel to learn more about technology, people, and food.
Love it. Got to add the food in there.
Yes.
So I kind of caught like your interview that you did with Justine, where you were kind of talking about when it came to like women content creators, women in the tech field, and it's very interesting because being someone in the LGBT side of things, I also see where like there's places where the LGBT people aren't being represented in a fair way. And I was really connecting with, and I'd never even thought, because you guys had even brought up like even within the makeup field on YouTube, the top YouTubers were males. And
Mhm.
I thought that that was very interesting because I would have never guessed that. And I think that that's such an interesting like aspect to kind of look into, because there are so many different people in minority groups that are full of talent, but for some reason we are not getting the attention. And I think that that's
Mhm.
really important for us to talk about.
Yeah, correct. And you hit it right on the head. It's just all communities. I will say when I went to a couple of these tech filmmaking conventions before, it would be weird. I met Amy DeLuise, who is the founder of a movement called Gals and Gear. It's a hashtag. So if there are any um, women watching who are into gear, we do have a hashtag where we can find each other. It's Gals N, like the letter N gear. So it's just talking about our gear. But I connected with her at the show and a few other women, and it was always very interesting because it's a large tech show, right? We have 100,000 people. And the bathroom, there would never be a line for the women's bathroom. And we always thought that was so weird because everywhere else, there's a pretty equal line, or if anything, the line for the women's line is usually a little bit longer. So I thought it was kind of bizarre. And I'm like, I know that there's a lot more women out here. And I'm very grateful that a lot of these conventions and trade shows have kind of steered away from bringing on women to solely exist as booth babes, because that has been such a huge pain point for me and for a lot of women who are amazing editors and DPs and directors, and to be asked the question like, oh, are you a booth babe? Or are you the makeup artist? Or are you the talent? And it's no offense to feel like you're mistaking me for a makeup artist or a talent, but why can't we be mistaken as the director on set? Why can't we be mistaken as the cinematographer on set? So I want to change that. And that's the whole reason why I started my tech channel and why I do the things that I do. I kind of started amplifying Asian American faces in media because I didn't see faces like mine like even 10 years ago when YouTube just started. So it's been a mission of mine to just always amplify marginalized voices no matter what. And I really give shout outs and I really want to uplift the communities that are doing the work behind the scenes and in front of the scenes to make inclusion and accessibility and diversity like available and accessible for all people.
Yeah, I used to work in Best Buy, so like I was very much in the tech field. Like I absolutely like that was heaven on earth for me, because like as soon as new stuff was coming out, like we were getting it firsthand. Definitely spent way too much money there, but there was definitely some times where I saw some of my female like counterparts being treated very unfairly. Like for me personally, like as an LGBT person, one of the stereotypes I fit is like, I don't do cars. Like, as long as my car gets me to one place to another, I'm good. But we had a customer that was trying to update their sound system in their car, and they were speaking to my coworker, Brandy, and she's like the expert there. Like, this is her passion. This is what she loved doing. And the guy was like, I'd rather speak to him. And even with me sitting there, like saying, I have no clue what I'm doing, like, did not study this, did not take any like e-learnings on these, like, she's the expert. And to see someone so persistent on speaking to a male just because it's almost as though they don't give any credit to a female to have knowledge around that. And then I had another one of my friends, she worked for Apple with inside of the Best Buy, and she was down cleaning the table, and a guy walked past her and he was like, "Yep, that's where women should be." And her
Wow.
face like turned 1,000 different shades of red. And when I heard that, like I walked up to her and I was like, that that's not true, right? And she was just like, that happens all the time, and I'm just done. I'm over it. So I think that that's an important thing for people to realize is that it is extremely inappropriate to speak to women as if they're not knowledgeable about things. It's
Totally.
extremely inappropriate to assign a role to a woman that as if that's the only role that they would be good at in a situation like that. But also, like, just I think that one thing that's really, really hard for women, and something that I realized when I started putting myself out there to the world, is being sexualized in a way that, like, people think it's okay to sexualize you, which is extremely disrespectful when it comes to showing respect to you, because they wouldn't be so open and forward to a male counterpart in that way. But I think that that's some of the big hurdles that women have to overcome in any field almost, because even in college for me, I went through school for architecture, and we had one girl in my class, and she was like my best friend, but at the end of the day, like, that was 15 guys and one girl, and it
Mhm.
needs to be changed.
Yeah, I agree. Like I was always the only girl in my woodworking class or just all the classes because that was my interest. And so I think part of it is just feeling, to be honest, and I don't, because I feel like I can with you. I actually grew up resenting being a female. I did everything that I could to be a male. And, it was okay. The example was a teacher in junior high, my middle school teacher, male teacher, had asked for volunteers to carry books from our classroom to the next, just books, right? So I raised my hand, and he looked at me and said, "Boys." And I was just like, okay, first of all, I'm volunteering to like help. And on top of that, you want selective volunteers. So why even ask the women in the class then? Why did you say like, can I get any strong boys to help me, you know? And so from that moment, I realized that I was doing everything that I could to be a dude. Like I even showed up to school in my basketball shorts and my boxers, my irises, hoodie. I never wore makeup. I always put my hair in a ponytail. I never talked about makeup or boys, you know. It was to the point where a lot of people didn't think I swung for the bat for the opposite team because I definitely really I resented being a woman growing up. And it really took a lot of growth and finding strong, amazing female relationships with peers who didn't find being a woman a negative thing to really guide me through the next part of my life. And now, if anything, I am so empowered being a woman. I just want to really take kind of my experiences that I had as a young girl growing up in school and hopefully create a space where other young women can look at content like what I just seen and content from my channel be like, wow, if she can do it, I can see a woman holding cameras and talking about gear and not being weird about it or shy about it, then maybe I can too. And so it really is representation matters so much. I know even Shang-Chi just came out and like to have the first Asian American Marvel superhero movie for the first time in how long? It's like it's such a huge thing because representation does matter and it can be cliche or corny if people have heard this phrase over and over, but if you do not know what it's like to feel underrepresented or not represented at all, then you don't really have a say in what it means to see yourself on screen because it really impacts you, impacts young people growing up feeling that they are a part of something and that they are included. So I think it's definitely very, very important. So, it's everything that I do, and that's what makes me go forward. And when I get the opportunity to be in these rooms, and like for you as a host, when you have the opportunity to pick people to interview and share their stories, like you really have the power to change and shape the conversations that should be had. And so I'm very grateful with NAV show that I get to choose the 10 people that I want to bring on that maybe would have never been highlighted before if they weren't on my radar, which I am now on their radar. So it's something that definitely needs to be talked about a lot more for sure.
Yeah, I think that another thing that's really important is when people, because a lot of times people will try to fill spots with minorities just to hit the quota for filling spots with minorities, whereas a lot of times being that minority in a group is extremely uncomfortable because they don't create or cater any space for a minority person that has a different background and a different journey to feel comfortable. It's almost as though, hey, we're giving you a spot as minority, but please be as much like us as possible. And I
Sure.
think that that can make it extremely hard as well to kind of, because you were talking about how you spent a lot of your childhood trying to be what you're not
Hmm.
because you felt like at some point that was not what was respected or what people would consider important. And it was beautiful to hear that you found like empowerment in yourself. But that would be a beautiful thing if we could start that at a young age where children feel empowered by who they are. Because thinking back, like we did have like one Asian person that was in our school because we were very rural, and I was fascinated that they were different, but I did see the struggles that they had to face. I heard the things that people said. Um, I've heard that, like, when it came to like the Asian, because I did jump into a panel on Clubhouse talking about like Asian hate after what happened in Atlanta, and saying that it's like the minority to be because a lot of the stereotypes that they place on that community seem a lot more positive than others, but it's still a minority and it's still stereotypes that not everyone fits. And I think that that can still be really hard to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, just jumping on that for those who are listening who are like, well, where do I start or how do I even begin to help? And I think just recognizing first that we all have different privileges. Like it's not just white privilege, and that's something that I grew up learning, like in my contemporary leadership class, by my amazing white teacher. But she was talking and explaining to us about white privilege. But I do see privilege across. Like for me, maybe like if I'm in an all female group and then, I have to talk about men in a way. And that's the thing, like I'm not an anti man person. I'm not a man hater. It's just I want to be able to bring up topics and add to a different perspective. I'm not here to replace you. At the end of the day, too, I wouldn't want to feel like a diversity quota either. So I don't want to feel like I was hired just to fill a quota. I want you to hire me because I'm good. But how do we even begin to present these opportunities to people who are deserving when you don't give us the chance? So I'm trying to help increase the opportunity part. And hopefully we won't be chosen because we just fill a quota. Because again, it's not a consolation prize to be respected in this industry. It's like this should be normal. What we see on screen and I work in the film industry, so everything that's reflected on the screen, I'm glad we're seeing this amazing change. But yeah, it's what we decide to put on screen and how we voice it and speaking up when we feel that we are witnessing acts of injustice or prejudice or discrimination. We all have a privilege in a situation when we're observing situations to step in or at least film it, be on standby. I know the bystander effect can sometimes paralyze people from engaging or interacting, but I think you just offering like a helping hand or just being present and knowing that as a male, when you're around women who are walking by themselves at night, how sometimes, it might scare. And just to understand that we come from a different perspective, and because even when I was, at when I started working at this job, like long time ago, they were asked like, why don't you should join Foursquare. In Foursquare, I don't know if that's still around, but it's an app that you check in and it tells everybody and your friends or like around you that you're there. And I'm like, I would never do that, especially by myself. Like I wouldn't want like stalkers or someone to come and this was from a male perspective, and he was like, I had no idea. Like, I did not think for once that would be an issue. And so just even offering like, hey, like we'll go together, or when we leave, then I'll like tag a location. It's just like these little nuances in society that you might not be aware of it, but if you're open to being educated about it, that's like a huge first step in trying to understand how the other side feels, or how it feels to be an ally to marginalized groups. It's just to really understand and not take things personally, because as a marginalized, in the marginalized community, or as a minority, like a double minority, a woman and an Asian woman, we experience things completely different from how, even an Asian male would. So it's just understanding that we're not trying to attack. I would love to have a discussion, and a dialogue, not a debate, like a dialogue, like an open dialogue, to be like, hey, let's talk about this. How can I help? And kind of go from that. But I think it's really being the first one to extend and say that I'm here to listen and I'm here when you need, and not really take everything offensively. I think that's really the first step in the olive branch of understanding how the other side lives.
Yeah, I think that you touched on something that's really important is when it comes to privilege, like we all share different types of privileges when it comes to art, depending on where you're standing. And one thing that I've learned is I do house the privilege of white privilege. I have the privilege of being a male, and the gay definitely knocks me off of some privilege, but within certain areas, my privilege I can stand. And one thing I've learned is when someone's speaking about uh, an instance that they are dealing with, a lot of times women being sexualized in places, a lot of times men will think, well, if someone was hitting on me, that'd be nice. I like when people hit on me, because in that position, you don't feel unsafe. You don't feel like if you let it continue that something bad could happen. And I've learned that when people kind of say, hey, I feel unsafe, I don't feel comfortable, like,
Mm-hmm.
don't try to put that situation into your circumstances, because at the end of the day, you lived a life of privilege that doesn't help you understand that situation at all. And it's in that moment that you have to accept that, and within your time of privilege. So if you said something and someone didn't take it seriously, if I was told that, I take yours as seriously as you are making that statement, and then I have that conversation with someone else, that is me taking privilege that I have that you don't, to get a situation fixed. Whereas it can be flipped around as well. I've been in situations where people think it's perfectly okay to dehumanize me for being gay. And when I bring that statement up and I'm like, it's not acceptable, like my work should be as equal to, if not comparable to or better than some of my counterparts. And people are like, oh, they're just being funny. Like they none of that really meant anything. I'm like, yeah, but when my work is attached to like stereotypical words and you're attacking my work with my sexuality, like you're not doing that to other people, and therefore it's
Mm-hmm.
making my work less in a lot of different ways. And I think that people need to realize that in positions of power, because I've even heard it. I've worked in like the corporate background part, and I've heard people in leadership roles make statements like, "Oh, well, she's just too loud," or she's always just like trying to correct things. She's doing this, and it's like, would you be saying that if a man did that same thing? And you just gotta
Mm-hmm.
pull yourself out. But I learned that when you make those statements, like it does get better. Things People do start to think before they speak, because if no one says it's wrong, like people get away with it and keep going. And until someone says that's not okay, change can't happen.
Yeah. And when you said there, like when you say that's not okay, to be an ally, the other person receiving that comment needs to understand that it's a learning opportunity. It's not like I'm attacking you, as you're saying, like maybe you're ignorant, maybe you've never grown up around someone like me. And if I'm the first person you're interacting with, like, again, it's also like a double-edged sword, because it's at the same time, it's exhausting to constantly explain things, and it shouldn't be the burden, but if you have the opportunity, if you have the power and the willpower to address these issues in a a very safe dialogue kind of environment, I would definitely do that. But I mean, that's because that's my line of work, you know? Like I when I was in college, I had grown up with such a diverse community. I'm from the Bay Area originally, San Francisco. So like I grew up around a lot of diversity. And it wasn't until I went to college that I realized, wow, there's a lot of there's like 40% Asian. I'm like, I've never felt like the majority ever in my life. And you know, I specifically enrolled in my leadership floor, and I was one of three Asians, and one of the Asians, like, you know, Asian male grew up in like all white dominant town, and then another Asian like came straight from Taiwan, and so we had different. You know, there's different Asians. We can't be lumped in the same group. I'm born in San Francisco. I'm so Americanized, but you know, it's like it doesn't encompass everybody. But I just remember you know, just getting lunch and going around the table, introducing myself. And a guy straight up interrupted me when I was introducing myself and was like, whoa, like, I just have to ask, like, where are you from? Because you speak English good. And I'm like, well, first of all, it's well. Like, if we pass like grammar school, like, you speak English well. Um, and I was just so curious. But I'm like, here I have to take time out of my introduction now to now explain to this person like where I'm from, you know? And so instead I took it as a way, here's an education. Let's see why this might be the situation. It's like, well, I grew up in an all white Catholic male school, and so I've never been around someone like you. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm glad that we got that understanding. Uh, but you know, let's sidebar. Let's sidebar and have a talk about this. If you're really curious, like I'm some exotic creature or whatever, you know, like you know, one part of me feels like that, but on another part of me, I'm like, well, if I'm the first Asian woman who speaks English well, and you know, maybe I should see if I have the time and the capacity and the energy to explain simple stuff, you know, just so we can, again, broaden the perspective. And that diversity is like all around us, that you know, the films and everything that we see on media and TV and in the movies, where maybe this is why people kind of feel this way or have these stereotypes about you. It's a reflection of the world that we live in, right? So that's why representation matters, because if all we see are, you know, stereotypes of kung fu fighters and speaking broken English or dragon ladies, like, yeah, if you don't have never met someone like me, this is what you think our community is, and it's not. So that's why representation is such a huge thing, and having these conversations and dialogues are such important ways to like move the conversation forward and like progress our society to one that's more inclusive and reflective of the actual world that we live in, because it actually is diverse when you know, step back, how there are so many different people out there. And so if media could reflect normal life, like how the world actually is, I think it would be a better place for everybody.
Yeah, I feel like social media and everything has made it a little bit harder because we surround ourselves by people who know us and will know our communities. And it almost seems like the world is starting to open up and realize, like, hey, diversity is good, different is good,
Right.
knowledge about others are good. But then you step out of that, and sometimes we get this idea that everyone sees the same information that we see. And that's something that I always try to remind people when it comes to LGBT people is a lot of our parents, at least in my generation, they were kids and teenagers when the AIDS epidemic was going through. And with that, a lot of the news and stuff that people were seeing at our parents' age was the gay cancer, everyone's dying, don't like, and that was like ingrained in their minds. So when it came to LGBT, like that was their like opinion of our community. And I think that it's important for us to realize that even I, as an LGBT person, I'm constantly learning more about our community. And if someone is in the community or an ally, they are probably so detached from us that the only thing that they get from us is the stereotypes or what the media portrays us as. And now in the social bubbles, like very conservative bubbles, don't portray minorities in the kindest ways, but that's what they're going to categorize and label us as because that's what they're seeing. So, yes, it's exhausting. I think that when it comes to being a minority, it's great to, because not everyone's an activist, but know how to point someone in a direction that they're going to get accurate information. I always say, don't just say Google it, because Google, uh,
The free for all.
yeah, it's only going to give them information based upon all their previous searches, and maybe it's not going to give them a very accurate definition of what we're trying to get them to learn. But just being like, hey, there's a great YouTuber out there that really does great education on this, go for it. I think that our school systems could really be updated. I think that throughout, like, when you think about history growing up in the United States, like, when did women start to become characters that we learned about in school? You don't really hear a lot about them. And usually
We were
it's
known
a
as
really short
anonymous.
place. Yeah, and like history did that to a lot of women because at the time women weren't allowed to do a lot of things. But I think that we know now enough information to where we can go back and start placing women and other minority groups back into our history books so that at least we're represented in a way that, hey, like, women and gay people have existed all throughout history and have played major roles in a lot of places, but it was secret for so long. But now I think it's important for our history books to start reflecting that.
Mm, preach. I love that. Just want to also say hi to Kevin. He left a comment. Thank you for joining.
So
Yeah.
when it comes to the way that allies can help, so people that do want to listen, do want to help, what do you think are some good ways that in like your specific field where you've faced different people kind of getting in the way of your success, how can some people as allies kind of help clear the path to make it a little bit easier for you to kind of step out and be like, this is who I am and I don't have to defend myself to be able to stand in this space?
Yeah, that's a great question because again, there's no like right or wrong answer, but I think times are changing. And I think first of all, companies and organizations first need to realize that they want to add more diversity to their employer, their roster, their payroll, not because they should, because that's one thing, but it's because they want to too. I know like we talk about how brands, can just during like, LGBT month, right? They just change everything to a rainbow and like they were never really doing anything for the LGBT community before. And it's just like all of a sudden in the month of May, it's like everything is so Asian centered because it's Asian Pacific Heritage American Month, or February is like Black History Month. And so, like, where are you the rest of the time? It's not something to be paraded just like for a month. It needs to be a normal conversation, a dialogue that happens within. I know that there's a lot more diversity and inclusion, like DEI, representatives and correspondents at these companies, but it's also usually run by a person of color. And I would love for it to, again, to not be our burden or, exhausting, but just to naturally have these conversations. And so I know that like when I used to work at Google and like all these other corporate ones, we did have diversity training. And again, it comes back to education as well. I know this is something that will have to be integrated, but we've all integrated so many things since the pandemic. We've integrated so many other changes at a faster speed. It needs to be normalized to teach about, you know, um, ethnic studies. Usually, art and ethnic studies are the first to go, which is actually the first story that I did that ended up on CNN headline national news when I was in college that proved to me that I didn't have to be a certain age to start, but I was covering the tuition increase and the fact that they were going to get rid of a lot of these Asian American studies, art classes. Those are usually the first to go. And unfortunately, when that happens, we don't get a huge breath of like how this world actually is. So along to your point about how education needs to be updated, I definitely think, yeah, like doubling down on how education needs to be updated. It needs to be in trainings for any kind of job, just how to interact, like even HR jobs, even you know, the police. Like I think every single institution needs to have diversity or like at least some sociology, kind of class or training. And again, you're not gonna and understand that you're not gonna understand everything that you need to know about one person in one class, right? Like that's the first thing we need to realize is that there's not a one size fits all. It's actively doing the work, actively being an ally, actively reaching out and figuring out and supporting and donating your time and energy and resources to communities that could use another outside perspective because we are all talking in our own echo chamber sometimes, but that's why I've kind of made the transition from just covering like the Asian community into covering tech because in the Asian community I feel like I'm pretty supported, hopefully, but I'm like, that's cool, we support each other. But if I infiltrate these other dominant cultures and I'm like the only woman or the only Asian person there, like I feel like it allows me to knock down those doors, build a table, bring more people in, and to just have a bigger dialogue that way. Because if it was never a dialogue or a discussion to begin with because there was no person of X there, then they would have never even considered it. So I think just the first part of it is stop denying and know that it exists. And knowing it exists doesn't mean like you're being extra or anything. It's just knowing that, yeah, it exists. We all have inherent, you know, racism and stereotypes. We all do. So like we don't need to deny it. Like, oh, I'm not racist. I'm like, everybody is low key in a way, based on what they have been taught. They have that inside of them. And the reason we can move forward and not feel bad or guilty about it is because I'm taking the active steps to do the work. I'm not perfect. I know I don't know everything about a community. If I mess up, I want to have a talk. Educate me, please. But when that happens, positively, do it. We talk about why I don't think we have enough dialogue where we can comfortably debate anymore. I feel like there's just you either agree with me or you don't agree with me. And remember when debate class and speech class was such a huge thing in schools? Like we literally were given assignments to debate, to see it from different sides. I just don't think we do that anymore. I think cancel culture is so huge. We're so quick to deny someone's change when nowadays, because of social media and everything's like filmed, it's kind of hard. I feel for the generation, like Gen Z, Generation
Yeah.
Z, because it's like not everything that they do is forever on the internet. And I'm pretty sure we've all done some silly stuff or like some things we truly regret back when we were growing up. But that's like as we grow, we have to learn and be educated and feel like we can do so comfortably. And when we are so quick to cancel one another because of something that could be changed if we just addressed it a little bit more, it makes it really difficult for people to want to even start to have that dialogue because they're afraid of saying something dumb or offensive because they don't want to be canceled. And then all of a sudden we're just all agreeing with whatever we are agreeing with versus actually formulating our own opinion, formulating our own thoughts, formulating how to just exist as a human being in this world. So I really just think that, yeah, I think really it just starts with um, understanding that people are human and we are all able to grow and change. And it's kind of on us to really have these dialogues and discussions and these positive talks with someone who looks different from us or someone who is different from us and find the commonality because it's really crazy how we are way more similar than we are different. And if we just gave the other person a chance to really, share that part of them in a safe environment, I think we would definitely be making steps to uh, progressive change for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I always say that the amount of time that you spend searching for like negative flaws and things that make someone different, you can spend just as much time doing the opposite. and the outcome that you will have will put us in a better place, because we are all human. We all, for the most part, our goal is to succeed in life, be happy, feel loved, be surrounded by people that appreciate us and empower us as people. And I think that too often, like you were saying, when it comes to social media, like there are people who comment on videos that I made 6 years ago as if it was something that I said and did today. And that's something that you have to realize, is like you have to do a little bit more context and look, okay, when was this recorded? Okay, back in 2016, we weren't in the Trump era. We weren't, like, the things I said at that moment did not calculate any of the growth that I've had since then. And I think that it's important for people to take that time. And when people say stupid things online, the first thing I look at is, where are they from? Because, like, in certain areas, people affirm that type of belief system. And for them, they are going out onto the internet with so much support from their community. They don't realize that there's a whole nother world out there that does not
Mm-hmm.
affirm that way of thinking. And
Yes.
we have to realize that that was their upbringing, that was their journey. Now that they are presented with the knowledge of most of the world doesn't think that way, that's kind of closed-minded. Now, where do they go from there? Because a lot of times with cancel culture, it's like, nope, you're done, goodbye, disappear.
Yeah.
But the important thing I look for is, like, where are they going now with the new information that they've gained? Because even talking to some people about LGBT, that you can tell that they don't have any friends that are part of the community. You can tell that they are very religious based in the background. Hearing the way that they speak, I know that they are coming from a place of wanting to show love, but some of their words are very uneducated. They're very offensive to the community. And I was like, they're coming from a place of love. I look for that first, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
is this person worth taking the time and energy that I have to educate them on why certain things that they've said would come off as offensive? Because without people like that wanting to open up and change and create that, like, community of togetherness, like, we won't be
Yeah.
coming together. We will continue to divide. And it is draining to be that person that is educating and trying to bring people together, but, like, it's definitely necessary. And I'm trying to use social media as a tool to do that instead of the way that a lot of people do it. And I think that because of 2020 being such a negative year for a lot of reasons, there's a lot of people out there that are also looking for positivity and change makers and people to stand up out of the darkness and say, hey, this way, let's go. Because I think for a long time we were so entertained by drama and by things that just were outlandish and rude, and there were a lot of victims to that didn't
Mm-hmm.
deserve to be victims. But I think that people need to realize that algorithms and the way that the internet works, like, we are responsible for it. The stuff
Yes.
that we see online, we have created for ourselves. That's the monster we have created. But if we start putting positivity and love and caring and, like, education into the algorithm, that will start to cycle through and push the other stuff out if we keep doing it.
Yes, 100% to everything that you're saying. And the good thing about all of this and the thing that has transpired in 2020 is I really do feel like now the trend or whatever we want to call it, I don't really like the word trend, but you know, I believe in authenticity. And I know that authenticity is being way more valued right now than having a million followers with no engagement, or just truly just sharing stuff because you're a celebrity. And I feel like with social media, it really can get certain groups who don't have the experience to feel negatively towards themselves or constantly feel like in a state of comparison. And what I want to share, especially, is that there's room for everybody. The world is not too saturated. You are absolutely enough. Somebody will definitely resonate with you. And if there's just one young girl for me, like if there's just one young girl who felt like they could like do what I'm doing, and it has changed the trajectory of like what she's capable of, like that's it for me. Like I don't need a million followers. I don't need, you know, any of that. I don't need to be the richest person in the world, because I know that, our time here on earth is, short and inevitable. And so, what do we want to do with this time? Chasing something and being somebody that we're not, or truly living in our authentic selves. And in that moment, feeling like, I rather engage and network and connect with people on my own feeling, on my accord, not because I bought followers or because I did X, Y, and Z. I want the people in my life to be surrounding me who want to be in my life equally. I don't really have time for this toxic or, just energy drainers and energy buzzkills and stuff. And I think 2020 has taught a lot of us that we're not going to just go out anymore. To entertain. Like I do want intentional meetups. I do want purpose filled and meaningful relationships. I don't need to go out just to be seen anymore. Because a lot of us had to experience the pandemic on our own. And we had a lot of time to self reflect on what it is that we want to attract in our life going forward. Is it chasing like this false life, this inauthenticity, or is it meaningful connections? Because that is truly what I feel like the world has, and human connection is. So I'm just able to really hype other people up and see and value community over competition, to rise my sisters and brothers around me and not feel like I'm in competition with anybody. The only competition is with myself, and that is on being able to grow and self-love and like be able to maximize my impact in a positive way. And that's the only competition I have with myself, because I know like time is very limited here. So what are you going to do with your time here? And so it's definitely important. And I think that not many people get to talk about that a lot. We don't talk about this in college or school. We don't talk about like even how to find a job. So a lot of people are looking to the internet, and sometimes the internet can be a very dark and dangerous place if you're not following people who are positive. So I'm very grateful for accounts like yours, which, like in the deep dark webs, the people who are doing the work day in, day out without needing recognition, that ultimately what you are doing is you want to see the change and you want to be the change. And that is simply amazing. And that is simply enough. Like, I don't need a million followers, So uh, it's just, I was on my soapbox there, but I've been talking about authenticity for the longest time. I was just on another podcast called Femme Regard, and it's a podcast based on the female perspective in films. And we were just talking about like, what do you need to like do X, Y, and Z? Like, do I need the best camera? I'm like, no, I think you need your own story and know that you're enough and live your authentic life. And you're able to add your perspective, because it's not just one perspective anymore. It's like, yes, you are valid, you are enough, and you are worthy. And everybody has a different story. You are uniquely yourself. So that's the one cool thing. If you ever feel like in a rut, I always just know that I'm enough, and my story is uniquely mine. No one will ever have the same story. My journey is what makes life beautiful, because life is a marathon, not a sprint. But it has changed my perspective entirely to give me the enough energy and the stamina to keep persevering in this industry versus feeling burnt out. So if you're ever feeling burnt out, I definitely would take a step back, reevaluate what you want to do in this life. What is your why? What is your purpose? Because you'll never have to question a day in your life if you're doing it for the right reasons or the wrong reasons, if you know your why and you know your purpose. And it actually allows you to say no to things a lot easier that don't serve your purpose.
Yeah, I think that when people learn that authenticity is like your battery for your life, like because we are so busy comparing ourselves to other people, and sometimes we'll see other people successful and thriving, and we're like, okay, let's look at them and take notes of what they're doing because that's what I need to be doing. But what we really need to be doing is like, who am I? What is my authenticity? Like, what is my battery to kind of keep me going? Because when I see other people successful, like I gain energy just from them, but I don't try to mimic who they are because at the end of the day, what's making them thrive isn't going to be what makes me thrive. And I've learned just from like talking to so many different people that it's once you stop comparing yourself. And it sounds like you had that moment when you realized, like, you know what? Who you are is a powerful being. And it's just like, that's the moment where you're going to take off. Because as long as
Mhm.
you are like looking at someone else and saying, I wish I could be who they are, you're dulling your own self and you're not making yourself attractive to the world to kind of give you everything you deserve. And like when it comes to like thriving, like your energy when you are your authentic self attracts everything that you need. And people are attracted to you when you are thriving because they see this like energy in you that doesn't exist when you're not being yourself, when you're not thriving and feeling positive. And yes, life gets rough sometimes, but like you said, when you are understanding of your authentic self, when a question comes up of left or right, you're like, you know what? Right is the way because my goal is this and I'm going that way. Whereas if you are trying to be someone else or trying to be pieces of everyone else around you, when those questions come up of, okay, this or that, it's going to take you so long to figure it out because you're taking pieces from everyone else. But once you know yourself, like, this
Mhm.
is who I am, like, that makes that journey so much easier and runs so much smoother.
Oh, amen to that. I would say if anybody wants to like get on this energy vibe that we're on right now, I feel like I had a lot of amazing mentors growing up, and it's just finding that one mentor, being a part of these groups. You can even find them on Facebook or Instagram, and just connecting with one another based on like that energy level, or even like taking like a leadership course that I was so privileged to be a part of, like a leadership course by Laverne McKinnon. It was just like a full on Asian American executives in entertainment. Like we would meet once a Sunday and then we would talk about like our saboteurs, what our captain is, our leadership styles, because everybody has a different style. And to celebrate that and not feel bad, like, oh, I'm not the one that leads, I'm the one that listens. We need all those types of leadership skills. It's not just the person who is the loudest gets to be the leader. Some of the most incredible leaders are the ones that are silent and like speak last or don't speak at all because they can read and feel the energy of the room and save a lot of, relationships because they can feel they're more empathetic. And soft skills are definitely, I feel, should be celebrated a lot more. That's why I think on even resumes now when people are applying for jobs, like putting soft skills like in certain fields, like that is incredibly um empowering and powerful to have the ability to be intuitive, to understand how the energy of the room is, to know what might offend one person or when to step in when your colleague has an amazing idea but might be too shy to step up. You not being able to nudge or encourage them, like that goes a long way. So when we talk about like what are the steps that we can do to be an ally or to be more vocal about things, it's like don't just focus on the big things, like the things that are milestones, right? We look at our timelines. It's built of the little moments. It's built of all these interactions and little moments that have made so much impact. And it might have not been big to you, but trust, it's big for the other person. Like just being able to know, especially as a woman, that we usually, get our thoughts miscredited or not credited at all. It means a lot when a male colleague says that actually agreeing with Nikki over here, when she said this, like I double on that and I affirm that, or I back this idea so much. It's, credit is something where I think we've grown up to feel like it's a bad thing to ask for this, or I feel bad if I don't get credited. But I mean, it's definitely in the way. Obviously, if people are stealing your work and miscrediting it as somebody else's, that's like a whole thing. So being able to stand up and say, actually, you know what you said, I totally love that, and knowing that. even the slightest thing as a man, like you know your male privilege, you use your male privilege that moment to actually help widen the lens of perspective and the experience for a woman who always has felt that they've been miscredited. So that's just like one example. And so like look at those little moments that really allow for everybody to feel heard and seen. And for me, it's like definitely going into more of the disability community, understanding that language, they're okay with the word disability. Like, is a disabled person? Like, I want to know what is okay for, this community to feel like. Just because this person wants to be called stupid doesn't mean we call the rest of everybody who looks like them stupid or whatever, right? So it's not like a one label that also defines a whole group. So I usually have to ask, like, what is it? How do you want to be identified? Even in today's age of having pronouns, I just had a deep conversation, and he was like, "I don't understand this whole pronoun thing," and I'm like, "Well, it's identifying like how you'd like to be addressed without even having a conversation with you. But on the other end, if I am an ally who I identify as she and her, having that in my email signature also might give the um all of like the conversation starter that, oh, whoever might identify differently feels comfortable enough to talk to me about their pronouns because I am putting very clearly in my signature that I am okay talking about pronouns. So it's just kind of like this club or the secret club where we just know and we know who's an ally. So I mean, they're just little things, that you can do to really build a more inclusive community. And again, it could be very exhausting, but again, in the little ways that we show up for each other, and make other communities feel seen and heard and supported, like it's huge. The impact is monumental.
Yeah, I think that when it comes to just like soft skills or anything that's like one thing that I've learned is that a lot of people don't get compliments for those types of things, so they never really think of them as strengths. A lot of times when I'm working with people to kind of help them build resumes, they don't see those parts of themselves because that's never something that's complimented or talked about. And so many people have those beautiful strengths built into them, and they walk through life and navigate so gracefully around things that need that type of empathy or soft skills that they hold. And one thing that I've learned is just going through life and letting people know, like, hey, like, your good morning this morning really helped me. Like, I was having a rough day and it really meant a lot that you said this. Something like that just
Mhm.
empowers people to realize that that is a very powerful thing to do. And they'll keep doing it because a lot of times people will stop doing those things slowly over time because they don't think it has any power or makes a difference in people's day-to-day lives. And we start to, like, I always tell people, like, in relationships, that's when you start to kind of have negative experiences, is because things weren't celebrated the way they should have been celebrated. Because through life, there are so many things that we do naturally that we don't realize until they're gone, that those were things that we
Yeah.
really enjoyed about people. And for the longest time, I had the issue of I didn't think that I was like this powerful person. So I didn't think that my compliments meant anything. I didn't think that me encouraging people would make any difference. And I just saw something phenomenal happen. And I walked up to him and I was like, hey, what you did was just like phenomenal. Like, I just want to give you props. I think that that was amazing. And in that, I still said, I know it probably doesn't mean that much coming from me, but, and in that moment, he was like, no, 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 stop that. Like, I think that you're an amazing leader and I look up to you in so many ways. So, like, that really means a lot coming from you. And I think that a lot of times we forget to say those types of things because we don't think that we are important enough to make a difference with a statement like that. But it does make all the difference. And I think that I've seen a lot of people saying, like, oh, good job on that idea. Actually, it wasn't my idea. It was this person. It doesn't
Mhm.
only show that you are enough of a leader to give credit where it's due. It shows that you are actually the type of person that understands that that's important. So, like, you might not be getting the claim of that knowledge now because you gave it to the person that deserved it. But in doing that, now you've taken claim to being a person that is willing to give credit where it's due.
Hmm. And it's really powerful doing that, you know? It's like using your position and your status to really help uplift and amplify other people. So it's definitely like a huge thing. And another thing that you touched upon, it's like, I'm pretty sure we touch upon this all the time, but it's like, be kind to everyone because everybody's fighting a battle you know nothing about. So I don't try to take things when people are angry or upset or maybe they had an off day like personally anymore. It's more like, okay, they might be going through some things. Who knows? Like maybe they just found out like a diagnosis, or maybe something or someone close to them just happened and they're having an off day. So I try my best in like my meditation and just how I operate in like in this world to not take things so personally because everybody's fighting a battle that nobody knows anything about. Some things could be triggering, some things could be traumatic to certain people. Even like a simple thing of saying Happy Father's Day could be triggering for someone who lost their dad. So it's like it's not because they're upset, or someone is fighting something, or battling something that you know nothing about. And I think that's something just to keep in mind as we all try to create a positive change and world too.
Yeah.
Oh, hi Kevin, he's level 4 alpha. We love meditation. Kevin
Yeah,
has an amazing channel, by the way. It's like huge, like gay memes, like LGBTQ, like funny, hilarious. Like you all need to follow him because he makes my day every morning.
I love it. Yeah, I think that one thing that you touched on that I think I've worked on is when it comes to, because sometimes we are very judgmental of people around us, and sometimes we bring that judgment into our conversations with people that we're having conversations with, not knowing that that judgment, that comment could really impact the way that this person feels comfortable speaking to you. And an example that I have is I was dating someone who had a very strong opinion about abortion. And my other friend that was sitting next to me, I was aware that this person had had to go through that. He was not. And he was making very large judgmental statements. And it forever impacted my friend who was sitting next to me. And I was trying to very strongly move the conversation away and very strongly say, well, that's your opinion, but there are plenty of reasons why that a person having an abortion is acceptable. And I think that you should probably, before you make such a broad judgment statement, get to know, like I was trying so hard to get him to realize that he was making a statement that was not going to be taken well. The
Mhm.
conversation was had after with both people, and we were able to kind of have a conversation that mended some things, but once that statement was made, it was made. And we have to realize, and I've learned that people in higher energy levels, people who have more self love, make less judgmental statements when they speak. So I've just kind of learned that, okay, this person's being extremely judgmental. They're probably somewhere judging themselves very harshly. What kind of conversations does this person need to have with me to kind of pull them out of that? Because those types of statements, because even if you're pointing and talking about the person across the street, you don't know if the people right beside you are going to be impacted in a negative way. So
Mhm.
kind of removing that judgment statement out of your like conversations, it works miracles when it comes to adding positivity and making people feel comfortable around you. Because a person who makes extreme judgment statements, you can guarantee that when you're not standing next to them, more likely they're going to make one about you.
Yep.
So be aware that that's
Yeah.
something you have to be
It's like
aware of.
relationships in general too. It's not just like romantic relationships, but your friends and your family. I mean, just because they have been your friends for a long time or because they are your family doesn't mean you need to really, be a part of that. It's one of those things like, yeah, you can't like, cancel your family, but it's like there's definitely things that you don't need to continue being open to accept especially if it's a false narrative or a false reality of your reality of like you say I'm this X, Y, and Z. I am totally not this person. So sometimes you really need to take a look at the relationships around you and understand that just in general, like relationships across the board, no matter if it's like romantic, friendship, family, like how we treat people and what we say yes to, what we accept in our lives, like that changes us too. So be cognizant and be, vigilant of what you do surround yourself in life. And I just know that in this industry, especially as a Asian woman in entertainment, like our circles are so small. So that I just like I just assume that everybody knows each other as a first degree separation. And again, yeah, why would I want to spew negative talk about somebody? Because that's not the energy I'm attracting. And I'm a huge believer now in like manifesting abundance and energy, and what you speak will you can truly speak things into existence. And that is not like some woo woo stuff. It's literally crazier things have happened, but I just think that obviously the law of attraction, like if you're going to put out more positivity and create opportunities for others, you're going to see that tenfold happen back to you. If you're constantly in this negative mindset, constantly everything people do, you have something to say negatively about that person, well, how do you expect the universe to repay you back in return? So I go to sleep and I think about what I'm grateful for. I go to sleep with gratitude every day. I do this weird thing in the car that once I park, I kind of just chill in my car before I go in, because I feel like the moment I go in, I feel like I have to deal with reality again. But I really sit in my car for long periods of time and just reflect on like amazing things that have happened, and just it kind of in a way acknowledges what the universe has presented to you and how I decided to interact with that, because there can be many opportunities, but you have to see it too. And what I talk about is you have to kind of meet the universe halfway. If you're being given these opportunities, you still get the choice at the end of the day. Do I want to do it? Do I not want to do it? Do I want to do this? So it's like I feel like if you really put out, positive energy, um, and love, the universe will find its way to pay you back tenfold. I 100% believe that, because I've manifested so many things, and it's this abundance mindset that there will always be room at the top for everybody. There will always be opportunities for everybody. Maybe it's just not happened yet, but you had to go through these things to like witness the beauty and the power of it later on. And maybe I would have never acknowledged that like at that moment in time, versus a scarcity, right? Mindset where, oh, there's only one thing, like, oh, everything bad always happens to me. It's like, well, we gotta like shift this mindset. Maybe we are on the wrong energy. Maybe we need to like get you in a different mindset, and let's work on that, because I really do think work begets work, positive begets more positive. So it's just like, what energy vibe do you want to be on, And it's so much easier and nicer and loving and less stressful to just be on the positive side of things. So um, I do really love how your topic for your live shows is positive talk.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's important for people to realize like life does like give you tough times sometimes, and it's important to look at those as times that you're gaining tools to use later on in life. So anytime you go through a rough moment, take a moment and ask yourself what you've learned here. Because at the end of the day, like all these things you're going through in life, because we don't all wake up one morning with a dream and then the next day we have it. We're on a journey to get there, and each day gives you something new that makes you more unique than every other person going for the dream that you're trying to get. And at the end of the day, like the tools, you might realize, hey, I've got 20 tools that I could do this. Let's try this. And it can send you in a completely different direction, but in a dream way that you never even expected. And like positivity and negativity, like I always tell people, like if positivity is up here, possibilities, and all you do is stare on the floor and look at the negative things that have happened to you, positivity is like floating around your head up here. But if you're not willing to like look up and find it, like you won't see it. And yes, life's hard. Like today has been rough for me, but I've been trying to find ways to kind of keep myself going. And I just, before I start any project, like you were saying, of sitting in your car, like I know that my projects that I want to do need to have high positive energy put into them. So before I'm like, if I'm in a rough mood, I'm like, okay, music, got to do it. Meditation, let's do it. Anything to kind of get me in the right headspace before I start, because I want to be in a project. And if I run into a problem, I want to be in that headspace of, you know what? There's a wall, possibilities over here. Let's turn and pivot and do this. But if you're not in that mindset, like if you're in, this is going to fail, this isn't going to work, like when you hit that wall, you'll be like, yep, see, look, it failed. Exactly what I knew was going to happen. And you're not even going to be thinking, oh, maybe this is just a time to pivot and go somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also something for those who tend to be a little bit more overwhelmed too, is know that if you can do one action item a day that gets you towards your goal or your vision or your passion, let it be that one. You know, sometimes even in the pandemic, like waking up was enough. And so just acknowledging that we are complete human beings with a full array of emotions, like that are so complex, and how those interplay with each other of, you know, not being depressed, not getting in a dark state, like acknowledge your truth. You know, it's totally okay. If you feel upset or angry or like need to cry, do it, just cry. But you give yourself a limit. Like, okay, I cried for 5 minutes. I got it out. Now it's time to like go do the day, tackle on, and attract better things. But you know, I think that's a thing. It's like we get so afraid to show our emotions sometimes too. But I think sometimes you need to experience that because we are complete human beings, and you need to allow yourself to honor your truth and honor your authenticity of being able to just live that moment a little bit to understand what frustration might feel like, and like maybe it triggers something in our brain to not try to do that again. You know, so I'm like, sometimes I feel like it's okay to go through those emotional outbursts, you know, safely and obviously not harming other people, or yourself. So it's just being able to act on those impulse emotions in that moment, giving yourself a time limit to do it, and then move on, you know?
Yeah. I saw someone during the pandemic, they created a TikTok channel and they were literally like celebrating traveling around their house each day. So like they they're like made it to the couch and like they did like this huge like celebration type thing. And I was like, now that's a lot of positive energy. And I think that just celebrating small things like that, I
Yeah,
think that you start to realize that there's a lot of things to celebrate in life. And it probably feels a little funny and foolish, like, but think about it. Like when you celebrate that, it's like releasing your brain to be happy about something. And I mean, brushing my teeth, let's celebrate. Woo, we did it. We did it before 10 o'clock today. And just
yes,
simple things like that and just growing it from there. And I always tell people like choose to celebrate more things in life than
yeah,
not, because we're not guaranteed another day. So you might as well celebrate as much as possible.
exactly. I'm a firm believer in celebrating your wins, even if it's no matter how big or small, and surround yourself with people who are open to celebrating their wins with you and sharing like these moments with you because, yeah, it can make a huge world of difference. Knowing that tomorrow's not guaranteed. So if I can go to sleep tonight and I'm grateful that, you know, oh my, it's a bummer that I can't travel, but hey, it's a blessing I'm able to stand on my 2 feet and I have hands that can craft things and create more opportunities for myself. Just focusing on the abundance side of everything. I think it's a definitely a shift in mindset. So it's just, yeah, sometimes too, if you're feeling overwhelmed, I have to like take a step back and just do some deep breathing exercise for a moment. You know, it's just like hold your breath, deep breath, count to 10, let it go, and then release that, you know. It's definitely a lot of things that I've learned to do during the pandemic. because I'm sure we were all going through transitions in our life and we feel like, oh man, this is so unfair. This is such a horrible situation. But just kind of learning to adapt and pivot and figuring out how to uh, pivot to create still like a be grateful for the life that we have. It's hard to do that sometimes. So if you want a challenge, I would just challenge yourself in trying to figure what that is, you know?
Yeah. 100%. Well, I see that we've gone over the hour, so I just want to say thank you so much for coming on and doing this. As soon as I saw some of your lives that you were doing, I was like, I absolutely want to do one with her because you are doing a phenomenal job with what you're doing, and the energy that you give out is just like magnetizing. So even if like you're saying like you don't need 1 million followers, I'm gonna say like you do, because you will make that much of a difference. You're not doing it for the wrong reasons. You're one of those people that deserves to be out there for the world to see, because there are so many people out there that need to see you just thriving and doing the most amazing things that you want to do with your life, because that's only going to inspire more people to get out and start doing the same thing. So I just want to say thank you for coming on and doing this with me.
Well, thank you so much for tuning into my, NAB show live with iJustine on NAB show's page like 2 weeks ago. Otherwise, you never know who you're going to meet. And I totally commend you. I think this is what, episode 152? So imagine 152 over an hour inspirational, amazing conversations that are just exuding positivity on this channel. And, kudos to you for doing the work day in and day out because it's not easy,
Yeah.
but you've chosen to do this. And so that's a huge testament. Again, you're doing the things that you want to see. You are the change that you want to see in the world. So know that that's incredible. And if people don't say it often, it's like know that you're doing an incredible job. So thank you so much for finding me and allowing me space on your amazing platform to just talk about positive stuff. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. We'll definitely have to stay connected, and hopefully we can do something again in the future.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And thank you to everybody for tuning in. It was so cool seeing your comments and your little heart emoji.
Awesome. Well, I will let you go so you can enjoy the rest of your day, and I will talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye, Drummond.
Bye.